Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this month's Kingston Conversation, featuring two of our associate member artists, Yildiz Grodowski and Diane Novetsky, moderated by our member, Amy Kaczur. I think it'll be a really fun conversation. I would like to thank everyone for bearing with us for our technical Zoom difficulties earlier today and keeping the faith. And also because of the technical difficulties, I know that we were emailing the group. So if you could make sure to honor the privacy of all the people on the emails, unless you know them personally, please don't reach out to them. And we would like to ask everyone to remain on mute throughout the talk. If you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat. I will be moderating the chat and I can pass them on to Amy, Diane, and Yildiz. The other thing I would say is that at the end, we will open it up for questions and comments. So at that point, you'll have an opportunity to come off of mute and talk amongst yourselves or ask questions directly to Diane and Yildiz. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Amy, who will introduce our two fabulous artists. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the talk.
Thank you, Diane. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for the nice intro, Diane, and it's a pleasure being here tonight. And also, I wanted to just reiterate, too, before we begin tonight's talk, that we'll save time at the end for questions, and we hope to have a fuller discussion. And we will be opening up to live questions so that we can have everyone participate. But feel free to jot down questions throughout the talk. If you have comments or questions that you would like for us to ask on your behalf, we can certainly do that too. Just put them in the chat channel. And just a reminder to keep yourself on mute until we do open it up. So hello, Yildiz, and hello, Diane. Hello, everyone again for joining us. Welcome. We are going to begin our talk tonight with both Yildiz and Diane. They're both associates, and they are currently showing in the show Drawn Together. Just to reiterate, it's open until the 28th. And it's a pleasure to sit with you this evening to talk about the work that you're showing and also learn about your process and the work that you've been doing up until this point. First, we'd like to share a quick video made by Yildiz and Diane of all the artists' works installed so that we can get a sense of the whole show. The Kingston Associates show Drawn Together is on view again until the 28th. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I remember you both talking about how the theme of the show held meaning for you. You both adopted a unique approach to the theme, as well as your sense of community and connection with associates as a group. And Diane, let's start with you. We're going to start looking at some of your work and diving into some questions here. Welcome, okay. Diane.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy.
Sure.
Sounds great.
Sure.
Looking forward to it.
Me too. Diane, you've been an associate since the fall of 2020, and I've enjoyed getting to know you, and I've admired your work in our shared time together as Kingston Associates and beyond. Would you care to share your thoughts on the significance of this year's theme, Drawn Together, and how you connected with other associates during the process throughout the time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Well, I have a personal vision of my own work, which I'll talk about shortly. As far as the meaning of Drawn Together, I felt it was just eminently important and very relevant to our times. My previous show in May had got into what I went through personally through the period of COVID. And in this case, I interpreted Drawn Together as emphasizing community and collaboration. And it felt like a perfect time to do that as we were united as an associate membership and sharing our thoughts and ideas, what we've been through, and how we can come together with a theme that was relevant to all of us. So I did feel that it was all about community.
And how long were you working on this show? Was it for a full year or about 10 months from the point of the idea of the show?
Yeah, I think it was in September that we started to talk about our themes, and it kind of came about slowly, and we discussed a lot of different themes. As an abstract painter, my work is really about the basic elements of painting, such as, I'm primarily a colorist, but it's so important to come up with a theme that everyone can share and provide their own insight and their own vision to. It really is important to have that theme, because otherwise our work can become like too unfocused.
So it creates a cohesive narrative throughout. Well, we know you to be an artist from your statement that explores a somatic vocabulary of biomorphic forms evocative of the female body. Bulbous and sensual and whimsical shapes reference Art Nouveau, 60s psychedelia, and early modernism. And you've talked about your work as having a figurative association. How is this manifested in your abstraction?
Well, as I said, I primarily consider myself a colorist, but the colors need containers. The colors are vessels for form, and it's all existing in space that I create on the picture plane. So the kind of forms that I'm interested in are bulbous, biomorphic, as you said, and they seem to naturally kind of take the form of the female body. In some cases, I find my forms resembling internal organs, joints, and other parts of the body. That really came about through my attempt to fill the picture plane with large curvilinear form. Matisse is really someone I've admired, and his cutouts have kind of been an example to me as to how I wanted to use form.
Exciting. I can see it. I can read it too, right there in that one image. Would you please take us through some of the works that you'd like to share or highlight tonight?
Sure. Let's start at the beginning. Well, we've talked a little bit about that. And in this slide, I'm kind of ahead of myself here, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how I come to create my ideas. And it really starts with colored pencil sketches. This represents about the same size as celestial bodies. It was about a 8x10 drawing, which I used as sort of a preliminary launching pad. When I paint, it's a very intuitive process, and a lot of things change drastically as I'm painting, but I get my ideas and start with this preliminary sketch. And you could see how some of it is the same and some has evolved or been eliminated. For example, the two orange horns at the top have been eliminated, and I really sought to emphasize some of the orange lines that border the round yellow forms on the left. So I have a lot of fun with these drawings, and it's kind of the way I've been working so far. I'm ready to go ahead.
I'm sorry. Oh, so you generally do make the mock-ups and work on the color relationships first, primarily.
I think it's a way of just getting energy, kind of getting myself in the mode and, ready to work.
Yes, and seeing your work, I mean, I'm struck by the incredible dimension that you get and high energy, both from the forms and the color and the axis of shapes. And it is very uplifting.
Thank you.
You get some
Yeah.
wonderful vibrational and richly saturated color. And my other question was, I know that you do the mock-ups, but how do you start your day? How do you start your daily practice in the studio? If you have a daily practice.
Well, it's very circuitous, I have to say. It's kind of rambly.
Sure.
I come in and I usually turn on the music and decide what kind of music I want to listen to. I have some water. I might go through Instagram or Facebook. I'm really a terrible procrastinator. And then I decide, what I have to take care of today, whether it's sometimes there's work that's basically stretching canvas, like just getting ready. It might be gessoing. It might be organizing. And, or it might be just looking at some of my sketches and deciding on what I want, what I feel I'm ready to jump into. And once I've done that, I usually use charcoal or pastel and draw it right on the blank canvas, mix up my colors and start working. So once I get going, it's simple. It's very non-mysterious, but there's a lot of rambling around before it happens.
All the preparation that goes into it. And
Yeah.
when it's ready, you're ready to start,
Yeah, it's mainly procrastinating.
Yeah, it's the helpful side of procrastination.
Yeah, definitely.
And you mentioned in your statement how you move back and forth through natural and digital forms. How do you decide what to use when you're shifting back and forth, either through natural, digital, or even imagined forms?
Well, I have to say a lot of this is very much on the subconscious level. I don't really think in terms of, well, I want natural or I want something more graphic and more digital. I sort of have a image bank in my mind of a lot of things that I've seen that have struck me. And, I don't need to look on the computer. It's all there. The kind of color that I'm attracted to these days has a lot to do with the color of, I would say probably digital photography and digital arts. I do come out of in the past, I've been a landscape painter or abstract landscape painter. So, that's one side of me. But I have to say that I'm very into saturated color. I'm into iridescence and oftentimes fluorescent color. So this kind of high key color is not in the natural world. And I'm drawn to that because I love the effect of these saturated colors next to one another. And as you say, how they vibrate.
They do.
So I'm leaning to that, but you need a full balance of color to make something work. And so I rely on more neutral color, more earth colors to provide the balance so that these high key colors make sense and move in space. So I hope that gave you,
it does.
Answered your question.
Thank you. Shall we take a look at some more of your pieces?
Sure, let's move on to the next.
Ask, in your art, what's most important to you?
I think preserving a sense of excitement, of experimentation, of not knowing what the next painting will bring. I do not want to be in my comfort zone. I don't want to phone it in. I really want to be there and make decisions that might be provocative, that might be scary, that might be, that might be frightening, but that gives me a sense that I'm doing something valuable.
So it's that discovery that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, not getting away from the comfort zone and just going for it. I want my paintings to express joy, to express whimsy, to express all the facets of life. And that means I have to really be in touch with my feelings, and I can't be hesitant. I can't be conservative about it.
You go fully forward with it.
Yeah, be fully
That's,
present.
that's wonderful. The fearless act of diving in,
Yeah,
trusting your instincts as an artist.
yeah, we have to become wild
Yes,
women.
yes.
I know Yildiz would agree with me. So I guess we can move on. Well, this is the
Sure.
painting, I should mention, the large one, 60 by 54, that is currently in Drawn Together. And I think it's a focal point, if I dare say, in the show, because it provides a lot of color and scale. And to me, the figuration implies a melding together, a coming together in space, and thus our theme of Drawn Together.
Perfectly said.
Yeah. And this painting occurs in the back of the gallery, in the last room, the project space. And it's one of those, talking about daring. This painting I really loved and enjoyed. And then I go back to thinking, well, I don't know, is it too much color? Is it just too garish almost? So to be quite honest, I have to admit that I've had my doubts about it, but it's something that I've just lived with and I just find fun. Some of the aspects that are new to me in this painting are the fact that I'm now blending wet into wet color. And you can see that in the kind of yellow, green, gold around this sort of three-pronged object or biomorphic form. The glow is kind of from the blending of green, spring green, and green gold all together. And it's something that kind of diverges from my flat color. And I enjoy that. I think it's fun to use something contrasting with the very even flat color that I normally use. Flat meaning unmodulated color.
Right.
So we can move on.
Okay. Thank you.
This is a painting, Memento, which was in the show that I had in the Center Gallery in May. And it's a painting that allowed me to really come to grips with some issues or some goals I have as to how I want color to work. And those are that I want my color shapes both to vibrate as well as push and pull to really indicate a space that seems to be pushing back as well as coming forward. And one thing I do that kind of makes this whole thing challenging is that I often will put a color right in the center, which is dividing the painting, sort of like the dividing of the Red Sea, or, you know, just moving that sea apart. In contrast to the color, I also like to use forms that appear to be shadows. Right next to that brilliant scarlet red, you'll see a curvilinear or curlicue form of green turning into a magenta. And I find that for me kind of serves as a shadow that allows forms to have the illusion of space and to be more three-dimensional. I also use a cerulean blue shadow on the upper right behind the green form. So a lot of that's done intentionally, as well as the deep blacks, because I love to have a full range of color from black to lower value colors. And it's all about creating these folds of form in space and giving that illusion of shadow. And I think...
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and the more I look at this piece, as you take us through and look at it, and seeing the shadows, seeing the effect of the color, and just even if it's a thin strip or that wider strip on the upper right, you really do begin, the more time you spend with this, you really do begin to see it more fully formed, you know,
Mhm.
in the dimension. So it's really amazing to see what you're able to achieve here.
Well, it's
Thank you.
all about using, using my bag of tricks of what I've
Mhm.
learned about color and what I'm continuing to learn about color and how color can affect the color next to them. As anyone who's read Interaction of Color, the Joseph Elber's book, that's kind of a basic book in a lot of art schools, color does not exist in any stable form, but it's always fluctuating and changing.
Mhm.
And depending upon light, because it is a function of light. So I'm always trying to come up with ways of providing some razzle dazzle with color.
That's a wonderful way to put it. Thank you.
And we can
And
move on.
I wanted to
Oh,
also ask about your titles as we're going through these and seeing your titles. Um, they're really marvelous. How and when do you choose them in your process?
titles always come after the painting.
Okay.
There may have been, and I'm making myself to be a liar. There are occasions when I'm reading a book, hearing a song, and I go, oh my God, I love that line of that Bob Dylan song. I have to use it. So that happens because I'm always listening to music. But I also am a very literary person, and I just file away titles or turns of phrase, American idioms. I love just the slang, the everyday language, and using that for titles. I think that it's something like, you know, uh, the 1950s, the mid-century poets like Frank O'Hara kind of came up with poetry that would use the language of everyday life.
Mhm.
And I like to use that in titles. I mean, sometimes I might have something that's maybe overly poetic, but I am a romantic at heart. So Phases of the Moon, it's a bit romantic. So
And it's your piece. You get to choose.
yes, exactly. So that's a long
Exactly.
way of saying that it comes from many sources.
Thank you. Let's keep going. What are the three most important things you want people to know about yourself as an artist?
Well, I love lists and I love things that come in threes. So that's a good question. I start with the primary elements that I use as an artist. And those are number one, color, space, and form or shape. And the second important fact would be art requires the vision of the observer to be completed. It's very important to me for my work to speak to other people and for there to be a conversation between myself and the viewer. And without that, my paintings are just gathering dust in the studio. I don't want them to be in inventory. I want there to be an exchange. And in that light, I was remembering that Rothko, I remember a quote by the great artist Mark Rothko, who said, "A picture lives by companionship, expanding and quickening in the eyes of the sensitive observer. It dies by the same token. It is therefore risky to send it out into the world." So I think that says a lot for me. It's both risky but necessary to share your art. And the third important fact would be, as I've said before, my work is always in transition, and creativity for me is defined by the search, the journey, and the experimentation, not necessarily even getting there. So,
Thank you.
and Twist of Fate, by the way, Of course, that's a Bob Dylan title.
Right.
And the twisting and turning of these curved forms, I thought made that a great title for it.
It's perfect.
So we can move on because I'm conscious of time
Oh,
too.
we do have a few more. We have a few more slides to take a peek at.
Yeah.
We do.
As I've mentioned, my work is generally painted very smoothly with a soft brush and fluid paint. Sometimes I'll go back to older paintings and I will reinvent them. In this case, Night Moves, I wrote 2021 to 22. I actually think this is older. I made a mistake. I think it's more like 2018. And if you look closely, you could see the highlights of ridges of color and raking of color in the black horizontal line above that green, what looks like a shoe or a leg, I should say. Those were indicative of older paintings, and I kind of went back into it, reworking it, and just allowing some of that texture to come through. So I hope it's not distracting. You know, I question that, but I do have this desire to sometimes go back into older paintings. And Night Moves was a really important one for me.
So this one you finally brought forward into 2022.
Right.
Like. Gotcha.
Yeah. So thus my paintings can take me from 2 weeks to 2 or 3 years to complete. Not that I'm working on them continuously.
But it's a process of going back and forth.
Yeah. So
let's take a look at a couple more.
Okay.
I wanted to also ask, what or who are your influences from historical or contemporary art?
What or who? As I've mentioned, the modern master that I admire and, you know, revere almost is Henri Matisse, especially his later work where he worked with painted paper and he would cut out forms. Those kind of flat colors and the edges and the way he could just bring a whole picture plane come alive with movement and joy is something I love. I'm also an artist who initially began as a graphic designer. So I'm very influenced by graphic design. And some of the more popular art movements like Art Deco, Art Nouveau influences me. And I think you can see that in the curvilinear forms. I'm also, Art Nouveau was kind of adopted by the hippies of the 60s and became sort of the psychedelic movement. Those curved lines and Alphonse Mucha posters, all that became psychedelic, but adding in the effect of the drug culture. So I love that a lot, and I've kind of enjoyed some of the bright, intense, eye-popping color of that movement. So I, you know, sort of low art, high art has all become a mishmash in my, you know, in the history of what I'm interested in.
What's next for you on the immediate horizon?
Well, I hope to continue working very hard now that the hot summer is drawing to a close. Some of the things that I'm wanting to add to my art life is I'd like to try more site-specific art. I'm really thinking a lot about public art and the art that has been shown in Boston and elsewhere. Janet Eckelman, who did the beautiful textile art that ran across the Greenway, I think it was 5 years ago. People like that who are creating art that is reaching the people. I just want to have my art exist outside of the gallery. The way in which it'll do that, I'm not sure yet, but I'm applying for grants and I'm looking around and seeing what would be a natural movement for my art to grow into.
That sounds really exciting.
Yeah.
That's nice to hear. And we have I think a few more slides. I think we've got maybe about 5 more. We can go through them.
Yeah, we can go quickly. Some of the ones I put at the end are either art that was a little oddball that kind of went against the typical forms.
Okay.
Celestial necklace.
Okay.
You know, the scalloping of forms is something that I come back to time and again.
Mhm.
On the cusp. Buddha's bonsai. Sometimes I'll invent titles out of, an interest in plant life and an interest in meditation. So Buddha's bonsai.
Perfect.
This is a
combination.
recent one, Bacchanal, in which I used fluorescent color. And you can see that this pink is much more vibrating than my usual pinks. It's because it's fluorescent.
It is very, very bright.
Yeah. And I do love pink. This is another new one in which I combined pink, although it's not fluorescent, with a coppery gold. Very hard. All I can say is it was difficult to photograph. I had to do a lot of Photoshop work to make this represent what I did, but it's a lot of fun. Somehow the camera does not want to see in the same way painters see. And when you use wild and crazy colors, it's hard to photograph them.
Especially if they have a certain depth or light to them that just, there's such a difference between the eye and the camera.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm doing much more in the way of modulating forms and the center green shape that, looks very much from dark to light was done using wet color, which is a little difficult to do with acrylics because they dry very fast.
Oh,
okay.
Let's go back up one more. We'll rest on yours and I'm going to ask you one final question.
Okay.
Before we transition over to Yildiz, and that is finally, what is the magic sauce for you in painting? Curious minds want to know.
Okay, the magic sauce, I'm going to go back to something that happened when I had a studio visit by one of the local art curators. And he was making an analogy between cooking and painting, which is very apt. The analogy is that when you're cooking like a sauce, you put a lot of different ingredients in that may taste very differently. But as you're simmering it and the sauce is evaporating and the sauce is thickening, you get a sauce reduction and you get something that's very different from the original flavors. You get a whole new flavor, a flavor that you've reduced from a lot of different things so that you get a new, unique flavor where the whole is greater than the parts. That's my secret sauce, just reducing, getting, kind of eliminating the excess or the extraneous and coming up with something that really sings. So I'm not a cook, but that's my recipe.
Oh, that is a wonderful story to end on. I'm going to be thinking about that. I am a cook, and I think it's a perfect analogy. And I think I'll think about that in art. Thank you, Diane.
Thank
We're
you.
going to switch over to Yildiz, and thank you so much for that wonderful presentation of your work. And we'll come back to you towards the end with more questions.
Okay.
But now we're going to switch over to Yildiz. And Yildiz, welcome back to the spotlight. You have newly joined Kingston Associates this past year. And it's such a pleasure to have met you and recently, especially more, and begun learning about you and your beautiful work. Would you care to share your thoughts on the significance of the theme drawn together?
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
The foundation of my art is connection, relationship. So for drawn together, instead of taking the verb to draw, I focused on us as a group, how we came together, how we were drawn together, and how we work together with our similarities and also our differences as well. And the show at the end, I guess, reflected that very successfully. With all our differences and similarities, it shows. That's how I explore the theme.
Well, thank you. It does show. And I'm glad that you had thought about presenting the whole show together so that we could see all those connections. So thank you for that.
Thank
And
you.
I wanted to ask you more directly, what kind of artist do you consider yourself to be?
Oh, I consider myself to be an abstract expressionist. What I mean by that is that I express myself in an abstract way. I'm not 100% pure abstract artist because there are always, at least most of the time, there are recognizable elements in my artwork. If we can go to the next slide, please.
Sure.
We'll show a couple of slides what I mean by that. Here, for instance, this is a painting that depicts a certain period in my life. When you look at it, and especially if you pay little attention, you'll recognize certain elements, certain shapes. We can go maybe to the next slide, please. Here it's going to be a little, this piece is in the in drawn together in the show. This one is less obvious, but still the body of the woman, female shapes are present. So those are the reasons I don't consider myself pure abstract with only unrecognizable shapes and marks. I guess that's how I would describe myself.
Thank you. In this particular piece, is there more than one woman?
I have three. It's
You have three. You do. Okay, there are three.
Gallery sitting. Men had a hard time seeing, but women do. And that was very nice reaction from a young woman, actually. I'm not going to go in details, but we are short of time. That's okay.
Oh, we have a few minutes we can go over.
No, that's, we can move.
Okay. And I wanted to also ask, in your art, what's most important to you?
Oh, it's, well, art is really a visual expression, especially abstract art. It stirs the feeling through the eye, just like music does through the ear. Mm. Of course, we all want to create visually pleasing artwork, but pleasing is very subjective word, so we cannot please everyone. So with my through my visual language, what I'm trying to do is connect with the viewer and transport them to a distant memory, maybe to a place, to a person, an event in their life. And if it can stimulate a conversation, that will be the cherry on top. I love it.
And can you describe your process to us a bit more? Sure.
I'm a very intuitive painter. But when I say intuitive, though, I just want to make sure that there's the intuition and there's the information, which is the technical side. So there's always a balance. When I'm intuitive, I don't mean from A to Z, from the beginning to the end. I work intuitively. The balance has to be kept well. At the very beginning, of course, the scale is always shifting. At the beginning, the intuition is heavier. Towards the end, the technical side, information takes over, of course. Talking about technical side, because I'm going to talk about the stages in my process, but before I go into that, there used to be a technique I used to work, I stopped. If we can go to the next slide, I believe. This one, I just want to talk briefly. There was a time I came up with this technique that does not apply to the stages that I will be talking later on in my process. This is very laborious, takes time I enjoyed while I was making. This is the only piece left. I guess I'm keeping for myself. I make a full painting and then a second one, not identical exactly, and it's abstract. You cannot make an identical abstract painting anyway, and you don't want to. Then the second piece I cut into strips, and then with different width, and I adhere them onto the main painting, again with different spacing. You know, it takes some time to come up with a good combination, of course. I stopped because as much as I enjoy, maybe one day I'll go back, because I always liked what came through at the end, but it takes so much time. This is the technical side. So as far as my process, I guess I'm gonna say it has 3 stages really. I'm not afraid of a blank canvas. I just start, I dive in it with all my being. This is the playing stage. I literally play with music blasting, colors galore. I write a lot on the substrate. Most of them are covered. Well, this is the early stage. It's all covered, but I know it's there. Something, it might be a music song I'm listening, or a poem, or something I'm feeling that day. I do a lot of mark making. This is the fun stage. Then comes the next ugly stage. I call it ugly stage because really everything goes wrong. Nothing works together. The shapes struggle and composition falls apart. You just want to give up. You want to throw away everything. But I do persevere though. I push through because I know what I'm going to create it and the beauty I can create at the end. And that pushing through brings me to the home stretch. And that's a really good one. And the final stage is, of course, that's where no music. At the end is the fine tuning. Even one little mark can change a paintings. Very
right.
I want full attention, that's the time. It's so very, every stage is so very different. I just want to talk about the middle stage though, because sometimes very rarely it happens. If we can go to the next slide, maybe. This one and the next slide, those 2 of them, I worked side by side. And the way I started, I don't do that usually, but I said they will both, the only common thing they will have is color blue. The one on the left will have letters. The one on the right will have vertical elements. And I start painting and and I went into the second stage, less than 1/3 one day. I'm listening to NPR and there was an interview with a woman. I forgot her name, but she was talking about a documentary that I guess was made about it maybe a year ago, some months ago. My octopus teacher.
Oh,
to me in such a way, I don't know why. I felt it in my heart. My heart is beating right now because maybe I don't know why, if it would touch me the same way another day. Maybe it was the day. So the painting told me what it wants to do, where it wants to go. You get into the zone, it flows, and that second stage becomes such a pleasure. You can work, you don't even know, you don't want to quit, you don't want to leave. Those 2 paintings, can we also show the second one, please? Because they are side by side. This is all about this documentary. Everybody asked me, have you watched? No, I haven't seen it. About almost 6 months after I finished this 2 painting, I watched and I was bawling it towards the end.
I know.
More. Anyway, that doesn't happen with every painting, but when it does, it's such a pleasant experience.
And very powerful.
It is.
This is, yes. And those were 2 that you finished was it last year? Or
this was, I don't know exactly, this was towards the end of 21, I believe. It's about maybe a year or so after the documentary. I forgot now.
Okay.
The 20, yeah. Yeah.
Now I can see it in your pieces here. Now that you mentioned that, I hadn't known that before today. So thank you for that wonderful nugget of insight into your work.
Yeah.
And I wanted just to tell you too, when I look at your work, I'm drawn into your lyrical mark making as storytelling. It's all richly textured and layered, and there's a complex narrative there. And so to follow and to be captivated by your visual decision making is a gift to the viewer. And I just also learned that you're a dancer, and now I can see your dancer's sensibility in your painting. As a viewer, I get to move with you. So that again is a gift. Would you also talk to us about your highly physical engagement in your work? How intuition drives your expression? I know you touched on it a little bit before, but would love to hear more about that in both painting and dance. And what is the importance of intuition in your work throughout?
Well,
that's a bunch of questions all at once, but
that's okay. No, that's all right. I have two passions that I couldn't live without: dancing and painting, or painting and dancing. The order doesn't matter. And intuition is very, very important in both of them. In my artist statement, I guess I mentioned the connection between abstract painting and improvisational dancing. Maybe I could have said connection between the way I paint and the way I dance, because the way music moves me from within, and it really, I feel it inside me when I move to the music. And it could be any kind of music, really. I mean, you can take two pieces of stick and you just bang, and I'll start moving to it. You know, it depends on what kind of sticks you have, then I will dance a different way, probably. It just comes from inside, from within. And the same way, my art, this artistic intuition also moves somehow my brush or whatever I'm holding in my hand, whatever tool in my hand at the moment, and makes it come alive. That's how I can describe it, to how it works, really. And it's both are intuitive and from within.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we take a look at some more pieces?
Sure, absolutely. Oh, this is, I guess, we were earlier talking actually about the story behind. I remember you asking me a story behind some of the paintings. Most of my paintings have stories. Of course, it's very narrative anyway. All my paintings are narrative, but some of them are real stories from my life. This one comes to mind. It was back in February 2020. My mentor, Elizabeth Ahern, and a small group of us, 7-8 painters, we used to get together weekly and spend all day with her guidance, her mentorship, paint together, and at the end we would, do a critique of each other's painting. Those were great sessions. And in February, we had no idea about it. It wasn't called pandemic yet. In our last, she used to call them master class. In our last master class, I had brought this canvas 36 by 36, and we didn't have painting walls, of course. It's not a studio. I put together a couple of tables and I start painting. It was very different than what you see here. And right after that meeting, next day or 2 days later, she emailed us and she told us that it's getting too risky to meet together. We have to take a break. We didn't know for how long. And said, okay. And then unfortunately in March, she got COVID, and in April, we lost her. She died.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Me too.
Devastating.
It was really, I just put it away. I couldn't touch, because this was the last day I've seen her when I began this painting. And my conversation, I put it away for more than a year. I couldn't touch. Then one day I went to the studio, I took it out and I put it on my painting wall and I start painting with her in my heart, in my mind, but also someone most dear to my heart, my mom. I am the middle of 3 sisters, and our mom passed on to another land, another life, somewhere else, many, many years ago. So in this painting, we are 3 sisters on the bottom part, strong and very grounded, with our mom somewhere over there, and we'll reunite one day. This is it behind this painting. I never ever tell the stories, but this is the one.
Well, thank you for being open and generous with telling us that story. I can't imagine how hard.
Yeah.
How hard it is. And
it's good. I'm sorry. It's
thank
okay.
you. Thank you for sharing that now.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
We can move on.
Well,
with that.
well, thank you again for telling us that personal story. It really matters. And I just also wanted to say, as an aside, you're very generous in showing us a peek into your works in progress on social media, into your life, into your process as an artist.
Yeah.
It's always something to look forward to. Little, messages from Yildiz for the day, and being so warm and welcoming. I also wanted to know, because we always see your studio and you've got a lot of pieces surrounding, and you may have 1 or 2 pieces that you're working on at the same time, and you have a lot of different materials that you work with. Would you talk more here about what drives your use of materials and choices, and possibly found objects or mixed media?
Sure. I love sharing my work in progress, even in their ugly stages on social media. I'm not shy from showing my vulnerable side. I mean, deep down, we artists, we are vulnerable. We have a vulnerable side to us. But I guess I truly believe that wholeheartedly, when this one is shared with the audience, with the viewer, it makes me a better painter, better artist. If I go deep, more personal, I believe my art becomes more universal and it touches more people. So for me, it's a pleasure.
It does.
For tools, oh my goodness, any kind of, if I start listing, it will take us hours, because anything goes, any kind of tool I can put my hand on works for me. Sometimes whatever is around, and because then it makes you limited, working with limited material, and that makes you more creative actually. Anything indoor or outdoor, outside, a piece of weed growing on the side of the road, or in a kitchen drawer, whatever utensils or tools I have, everything goes. I use them. I mention mixed media a lot, because I do use, and what I do, the reason I do actually, I want to make the acrylic rich and more yummy. So I combine it with different multiple archival mediums, like gel, different type of gel, soft, semi-soft gels, or glossy or matte mediums, or glazing mediums. Either mix it together with the paint, or glaze it over paint on the substrate for certain effect. And I also use charcoal. Of course, you have to fix it so that it doesn't smudge. Oil, pastels, pens, pencils, crayons, everything. And those are mostly for mark making more than anything. And I also need to mention collage, because I'm asked why collage, and why not? Why not collage? No, I'm not
used it all.
100%, because some really, through collage artists, they create the work with just collage material.
Right.
I use it as an extra element because it adds a, I don't know, visual texture, depth, and more dimensions, multiple dimensions. And also what happens, especially with the viewer, there are recognizable features like letters, numbers. And if I use maps, for instance, you know, I cover a lot, but there will be parts it will pick through. And if they may, when they come close, they'll see it. I don't want collage sit on top and then shout, here I am, come and look at me. They are hidden, but they're there.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it was introduced, actually, collage was introduced at the turn of the century, just before World War I. And did you know that?
Oh, that's so young.
You think so?
I do.
Yeah, yeah. You thought it was even older than that? My reaction was just the opposite.
Really?
I was surprised, so surprised that George Braque and Picasso used collage in their paintings with newspaper and printed wallpaper, of course. And if they use it, why not me? You know, I love it. I love collage.
Use it all.
Yeah.
Can we take a look at some more pieces here?
Yes.
Oh, I wanted to also ask you, thinking about the viewer, how do you envision the viewer's experience of your work? And do you think about the viewer during your process of working?
Okay, so the second part of the question is so easy to answer. No, I don't think about the viewer at all when I because all I'm thinking is what I want to say with my painting. What kind of feeling am I going to convey? And also what my painting wants me to do and how to respond to that. Those are the important things. Those are the things I'm thinking while I'm painting. But the first part of the question with the viewer, I guess there's two parts to that. Physically, what I want the viewer to do is just to stop them on their track if they see my painting from a distance, and then come closer, linger there, step back in. That's the physical part. But more important than that, I guess, what I want the viewer to be touched and moved on an emotional level.
Okay.
And because I bring something, I offer them something with my painting. If they bring and add their response, their experiences to that, the cycle is ended, complete, I guess. And it's to me, it's priceless. That's very important. Yeah.
That's nice. Thank
This
you.
painting in Europe.
Pardon me?
This painting is in Europe, Harbor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, bye Harbor. You know, places are important to me. Relationships, I never mentioned actually. This one and next one, also these two paintings and some others, there are about places. I have an interior architecture background. That's come probably. And when I say places, usually it's not nature, but it's more suburb, urban sketches. Yeah.
Let's go through, if you don't mind, maybe the next 5 slides, talk
Yeah,
a little bit about them. And I've got some more questions here in my notes. I wanted to talk to you about your titles.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, they seem to have a large role in your works too. And how did you choose them?
I want my titles to, how do I say that? Without being very obvious, to reflect the core meaning of the painting. But they shouldn't be very obvious. And some of them, not many, are given beforehand. Very few though. And some afterwards. Majority is while I'm painting, they show up in my mind, literally. I might jot down things, you know, and then they might change several times. But especially the ones afterwards, brainstorming helps a lot. I love brainstorming with my daughter. She is so good. What we do, depending on what the painting painting is conveying, what kind of feeling it has. We go back and forth, either in person or with texting until our favorite is born. Oh, I love that
Okay,
so much.
that's great. That's great. Collaborative process.
Exactly.
And to have that, you must trust her,
Oh,
trust her what she brings to it. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yes. Mhm.
Let's see here. Let's take a peek at a couple more here. I think I don't know if would you like to talk about your influences from a historical or contemporary art perspective?
Very briefly,
Sure.
it's going to be, sounds maybe a little bit off and funny, but I am off anyway. So it's Van Gogh and Basquiat are my soulmates. They speak to my soul. I believe if they lived today, if we were together, we can go back to the last one, please. It's really, we would be pals if they were alive. We're so different in so many levels, but same. They speak to my heart. Kandinsky, my idol, is my playmate because as I'm painting, I always think of him. He makes me smile. The things he says, the way he paints, he's my playmate. Joseph Albers, in my mind, he's the master of color theorist, especially the way interactions of colors, his book, his teaching are sublime. I believe no one else parallels him. From the contemporaries, Joan Fullerton, I would say, always inspires me. She became my friend later on, but I'm always inspired by her work. And of course, Freya Koral is, she was world renowned and one and only a Turkish, my native country, ceramic artist. She started as a painter, then she became ceramicist. Her, especially her wall panels are incredible, and she was influenced by the art of the ancient civilizations of Turkey, Mexico, East, mostly Japan, I believe. And she was born, I believe, turn of the century, 1910 or so, and died in the 90s, 1997, I guess. But she used only her first name. She signed her first name just like me. So I love her.
Freya?
Yeah,
Oh.
Freya, Yildiz.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, that's great. Oh, thank you. I'll come back to you with some questions on some of your influences another time outside of this. I wanted to talk to you more about a couple of ideas that you had in your statement. You also mentioned a stage. Okay, we had talked about your 3 stages of your process and the pushing through stage. Did you want to talk about that more? And in considering our recent past, especially when so many of us have struggled to be creative or produce work throughout the pandemic, and sometimes have been prompted to make bold changes. Can you tell us a bit more about how that pushing through stage is like or was like in your process, especially with, I think, a particular piece that you want to talk about, and how drawing on that resourcefulness guided you through? It's a juicy question, but
it is. It's a very interesting and long question. Thank you, Amy. I love this question, actually, and I'll try to answer well. I'll try my best. In short, I've not been affected by the pandemic as far as my creating my art, what I made, how many I made, my productivity, my style, or the subject matter. Most of it remained the same. I hope that doesn't make me boring or untouchable, but I guess the reason was because of, perhaps because of this pushed through, not giving up, which is in my nature, has been in my nature since childhood, and it continues to stay with me in my adult life. However, something happened that saddened and angered me at the same time, both at the same time. That is going to bring me to the last painting. Back in April or early May, I started working, and we can go to the next slide in the studio. This is how the painting started. My music, I love playing, and this is my playing stage, and I was using all these joyful, cheerful, happy colors, yellows, and pouring, playing with it. And I'm working on 3 separate panels because it's a large 40 by 76 inch, but I made a rule that the largest piece will be whatever it can fit into my car. So in order to make it larger, I'm working on several panels. So everything's fine, and I'm going into this ugly stage. And unfortunately, something happened in this beautiful our country. This is a very divisive issue, but I guess it should be talked. I'm talking about the reversal of Roe v. Wade. When that happened, almost next day when I went to the studio, this painting was running away from me. It was taking its own direction. Honestly, I had no choice but just run after and then follow where it was taking me. It completely changed directions. And I was, with such interest and determination, I stayed with it and I followed through. Because of this limited choices we were left now, I could have called it, I could have named the choice, but then I thought it encompasses so much more than that. Multiple generations, the youth, the elder, the wise and the adult, they all get together. They were drawn together to fight and take back their right. In spite of, can we go to the next painting? Next slide, please, because this is the painting. It's in spite of this ancient, the passé, not only in body, but more importantly in mind. They will take it back one day. Yes, I believe. So here's another story behind another painting. I was going to have only one, but that's the story behind this painting.
Thank you. It's such a powerful piece, and I hope that people get down to the gallery to see this. You need to go visit and stay a while with this piece.
Yeah.
Thank you. I also wanted to ask you what's next on your horizon, and then we'll get to a final question.
I want to have a show, at a museum, but also I need to crack the whip because I never apply to museum shows. I never contact museums, but I'm going to do that. That's what I want. And a representation by a gallery, but a very reputable, good, not just in a gallery. And the most important one, I guess, I want to work a collaboration with a musical piece. I want to work with someone simultaneously. I don't want to paint based on a composition, or I don't want somebody composing music based on my painting. I want to work together at the same time, composing and painting, and at the end, we cannot have, with one piece, we cannot have a show, but we'll do something, some gathering. That's what I want to do.
That sounds very exciting and great goals to have. And the collaboration sounds really wonderful too. Yes, wonderful. And finally, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question, but what is the secret sauce for you in painting?
Oh, my sauce. It's not going to be
your sauce. It's not going to be a secret anymore.
It's not a secret. Also, it has nothing to do with the kitchen, I guess.
Yes.
It's being true to myself and only to myself, and never be afraid to ask, what if? What if I did this? What if I changed this? What if I added this? What if I completely covered this? Never be afraid to ask that question. That's my secret sauce.
What if? Thank you. Thank you for sharing your sauce. And I might use you, and I'll use yours as well. I'll borrow it. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
I think we're going to need to end the presentation here and to see if we have any questions from the audience. But I wanted to also welcome back Diane. And thank you both. Thank you for your generosity in speaking about your work. It's wonderful to see you here and also to dive into your process and your thoughts behind your work. It's been a very lively and truly informative talk. I've learned so much from both of you tonight, and I can't wait to now go back and see your work and think about some things that you've said. So thank you. And please remember to let us know when you're going to be down at the gallery so that people can come see you while you're down there. And thank you again for sharing about your work and your stories behind it, and for reminding us of the power of art to make connections and to draw communities closer together. And we will welcome back our marketing director, Diane, and open it up for our guests. Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I know we've run over a little bit and some people have obviously had to leave, but it would be great. I also, from Yildiz and Diane, learned so much about their work this evening, and I'm so excited about, again, like Amy said, going back to the gallery and looking at it and visiting your studios to see all of the amazing pieces that are not on view. If anyone wants to ask questions or have a discussion, I know it's coming up on 8:30. So maybe if we could take 5 minutes now, and then we can bid everyone a good night.
That's good.
Can I ask something? I don't know if I should put it in the chat or just start talking.
Oh, no, just start talking.
Just start talking.
Okay, thanks.
Oh,
And Anne and Yasemin, if you're still there and you want to come off of, start your video, that would be great.
So Yildiz is my mom, so I'm responsible for some of the title brainstorming.
Oh, yay.
Whoa.
Trust me, but she trusts me enough to sometimes just completely outright reject some things that I recommend, so it's a safe space.
Great.
So something that really struck me from this discussion is how similar so many elements of both of your paintings are, that both of your use of bold, vivid color, the free, fluid movements,